My name is Jennifer. Last month, at the family reunion, I watched as my daughter, Emily, descended from a helicopter onto my father's front lawn. It was a sight that left everyone in the family speechless, a stark contrast to the way she'd been dismissed as average for so long. But this moment didn't come out of nowhere. It was the result of a long, standing family feud and a journey of hard work and self-discovery. I grew up in a large, wealthy family in the suburbs of Chicago. My father, Henry, was a strict and traditional man who believed that sons were the future of the family, while daughters were there to support them. I'm the eldest of 3 children. My younger brother, Benjamin, was always the golden child. He was athletic, charming, and Henry saw him as the one to carry on the family name. My younger sister, Sarah, spent her whole life trying to gain our father's approval, often at my expense. As for me, I was the forgotten one. I always excelled in school. I graduated as the valedictorian of my high school and went on to study medicine at a top-notch university. I became a successful ER doctor, saving countless lives over the years. But none of my achievements seemed to matter to my father. He saw my career as a women's job and never once displayed my awards or achievements in our family home. Meanwhile, every success of Benjamin's, from his high school football wins to his business school graduation, was proudly put on display. I got married young, at 23, to a man named Daniel. He promised me the world, but ended up leaving me and our daughter, Emily, when she was 4. He never paid a single cent in child support and just vanished from our lives. My father's reaction was cold. "You should have chosen better." He made it seem like I was the one at fault. The only person who truly believed in me was my grandmother, Clara. She was a feisty and independent woman who had worked as a librarian all her life. She had saved up a significant amount of money over the years, and she set up a trust fund for Emily's education. She gave me a simple watch, an old Timex, and told me, "Jennifer, your worth isn't determined by what others think of you. Hold your head high and never let them dim your light." Emily was a typical girl growing up. She went to public school, wore ordinary clothes, and had a B+ average. She was hard-working but not the kind of child who stood out immediately. At family gatherings, Benjamin's son, Ethan, was always in the spotlight. He was a child prodigy, winning math competitions and getting private tutoring from the best in the business. His parents spared no expense on his education, and my father believed he was destined for greatness. At these events, Emily was always pushed to the side, sitting at the kids' table even when she was well into her teens. Everything changed when Ethan got accepted into Harvard. The whole family was over the moon. My father opened a bottle of his most expensive champagne, something he'd never done for any of my achievements. But there was a problem. Harvard is expensive, and Benjamin was in financial trouble. His latest business venture had failed, and he was drowning in debt. 3 weeks later, I got a call from my father. It was a Tuesday night, after a long and grueling shift at the hospital. I was exhausted, but his voice on the phone was as cold as ice. "Family meeting, Sunday at 3. Don't be late," he said, and hung up without giving any explanation. That night, I couldn't sleep. I opened an old fireproof box in my closet and found my grandmother's will, which I hadn't looked at in years. It contained the trust fund she'd set aside for Emily. On Sunday, I drove Emily to my father's house. She was nervous but tried to be brave. When we arrived, everyone was there. Benjamin and his wife, Lisa, were sitting on the sofa looking tense. Ethan was standing by the fireplace, wearing a Harvard sweatshirt. Sarah and her husband, Mark, were sitting on the love seat, and Sarah gave me a smug look. My father launched into a speech about family legacy and how Ethan represented the future of the family. Then he got to the point. "Jennifer, I know you have money set aside for Emily's education. I need you to give it to Ethan to pay for his first year at Harvard. Emily can go to community college." I was shocked. "Dad, that money belongs to Emily," I said. But he wouldn't listen. "Emily is average. She'll do fine at community college. Ethan is a genius. He's going to make a name for our family," he argued. Sarah laughed and said, Jennifer, be realistic. Your daughter is never going to amount to anything. She'll end up like you, working herself to the bone and getting nothing in return." Emily's eyes welled up with tears, and I felt a surge of anger. I tried to defend her, but Sarah stepped forward and spat in my face. The room went silent. My father just sat there, watching, saying nothing.
That was the moment I snapped.
I reached into my purse, pulled out a handkerchief, and wiped the spit off my face. Then I stood up and said, "This money is in a trust set up by my grandmother for Emily. I have no control over it. And from now on, I want nothing to do with this family." I took Emily's hand and we walked out. We never looked back. The next 15 years were tough. Grandmother's trust barely covered Emily's community college tuition. She lived at home, took the bus to school, and worked part-time at a coffee shop. I picked up extra shifts at the hospital to make ends meet. We lived a simple life, but there was a newfound peace in not having to deal with my family's expectations. During this time, I heard through the grapevine that Ethan had dropped out of Harvard after his first year. He couldn't handle the pressure. Benjamin declared bankruptcy, and he and his family had to move into a small apartment. Sarah's marriage fell apart, and she ended up in a women's shelter. Meanwhile, Emily was quietly building her own life. She transferred to a state university and got a job at a tech startup doing customer support. She was determined to learn programming and spent countless hours at her laptop, even after long days at work. One day, about 5 years ago, she called me with some exciting news. An investor had seen the potential in an app she developed to help small businesses manage their energy consumption. He offered her $500,000 to start her own company. Over the next few years, her company, Green Tech Solutions, became a huge success. It was valued at over $200 million. Then, I received an invitation to the family reunion. It was printed on fancy paper, and it had my father's name on it. I wanted to throw it away, but Emily insisted that we go. 3 days before the reunion, she came to my house with a leather briefcase. Inside were the documents for the Clara Foundation, a charity she'd started 6 months ago. It provided scholarships and vocational training for women in difficult situations. She'd also found out that Sarah was in a women's shelter and wanted to offer her a place in the foundation's accounting certification program. On the day of the reunion, I drove to my father's house alone. Emily said she'd meet me there. When I arrived, the house looked different. It was shabbier, and the once perfectly manicured lawn was overgrown. I saw Benjamin, who had gained weight and looked defeated. Lisa was standing next to him, wearing old, fashioned clothes. Ethan was sitting in the corner, looking lost and directionless. My father was sitting in a chair, looking frail and old. Suddenly, I heard the sound of helicopter blades. Everyone looked up as a sleek black helicopter landed on the front lawn. The door opened, and Emily stepped out. She was wearing a sharp business suit and looked confident and successful. She walked towards my father and said, "Grandfather, I'm not here to reconcile. I'm here because of Grandmother Clara. She believed in me when no one else did. She left me a trust that allowed me to get an education you wanted to take away." Then she turned to Ethan. "Ethan, I'm offering you a chance to start over. My foundation has a program for career transitions. It's free, but you have to be willing to work." Ethan just stared at her, his face a mix of emotions. Next, a black SUV pulled up and Sarah got out. She looked thin and tired. Emily walked up to her and said, "Aunt Sarah, I'm offering you a place in our accounting certification program. It's not about forgiveness, but about giving you a second chance, just like Grandmother gave me one." Sarah started crying and took the folder Emily offered her. My father sat there, his face pale. He looked at me and said, "Clara always said I was wrong about you." I just nodded. She was right, but I don't need your approval anymore, Dad. In the end, Sarah completed the accounting certification program and got a job as a bookkeeper. Ethan never took Emily's offer and still lives with his parents. Benjamin's financial situation has only gotten worse, and there's talk of selling the family home. Emily bought me a small house with a garden. I've retired early and spend my days doing the things I love. I know that the real victory isn't the money, the helicopter, or the success. It's the knowledge that we don't need the approval of those who couldn't see our worth. We have each other, and that's all that matters.